Welcome to This Week from Blue Mountain Broadcasting. I'm Lynelle Ellis, president of Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association, and I am so glad that you've tuned in. We're going to have a really interesting show today. I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Timothy Golden, who is professor of philosophy at Walla Walla University, and he is going to share with us some very important thoughts around the Black Lives Matter movement. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And also, we'll share some things that are going on here with Blue Mountain Television and our ministry in the station news segment. First, though, let's start with a devotional thought. You know, if you have been watching the news, just even scanning it, let alone reading it deeply and carefully, you have quickly learned that there is a call going on for justice in our nation right now, and really all around the world. There's also been some conflict and violence. And there are differing opinions, conflicts not only over inequality and injustice that we see around us, but there's conflicts over differences of opinion about how to address and resolve these issues. It feels sometimes like it's pretty distressing, it's unfair, it's disturbing. And you know what? These kinds of situations were also predicted by Jesus. Near the end of his life on earth, Jesus explained to his disciples what things would be like at the end of the world, or the end of time as we know it. Matthew chapter 24 records a description of the situation just before Jesus comes back to earth. And one of those descriptions says this: "And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold." Matthew 24:12. That's how it feels right now. Like love is growing cold. So how can the Christ follower respond? What can we do about it when we feel the love in our own hearts growing cold? When we realize that we are not loving the people around us as Christ loves us? One thing that I've felt compelled to do is to go back and reread from the best book in the Bible for love advice. And that book is 1 John. So I've done some reading in the book of 1 John this week. And here is some of that beautiful counsel. Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God. But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. God showed how much He loved us by sending His one and only Son to the world so that we might have eternal life through Him. This is real love. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. Dear friends, since God loved us that much, we surely ought to love each other. That's from chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. And you know, it's not just a feeling. It's not just this warm, fuzzy feeling of love, and it's not just words. There has to be action. There has to be something that we do with this love. So John also writes, "Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions." That's chapter 3, verse 18. You know, this kind of love that John's talking about has hands, feet, it has a mouth. There's action involved. We must stand up for the rights of every one of God's children. We must go outside of our comfortable place to love each other as God's precious child. We cannot conjure up this kind of unselfish love from somewhere inside of us. This kind of love is a response to God's amazing and beautiful love toward us. I pray for that kind of love. Please stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the This Week Show. I'm so glad that you have tuned in, because right now I have a very special and important guest who I'm going to be talking with, and it's Dr. Timothy Golden, professor of philosophy at Walla Walla University. Dr. Golden, it is so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon.
Now, I did give your title, but tell me a little bit about your work at Walla Walla University.
Well, as you've indicated, I am professor of philosophy. I teach courses in a broad range of philosophical subjects. I am also a director of the legal studies program here at Walla Walla University, and I'm also blessed to serve as the director of the Donald Blake Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Culture. In all of these roles, I try my best to maintain a presence of equity and diversity here on campus, and I'm blessed to be able to work with a wonderful, talented board of faculty and staff members at the Blake Center who are really the engine that keep it going. So I've just finished my 5th year here at Walla Walla University, and I'm very excited about the things that we've been able to accomplish in those 5 years, and I look forward to continuing to do this sort of work in the future.
Yeah, the Blake Center is important. How long has that center here at the university been existing?
It was formally organized in 2016, so it's been around for just about 4 years. We have an annual conference every year. This year, of course, because of the coronavirus pandemic, everything had to be postponed, but we're looking forward to getting back on track next year. And so in addition to our academic conference, the center serves as an advocacy group for students, faculty, and staff who find themselves on the receiving end of any sort of bigotry or hateful treatment here on campus. And we're just here to ensure the integrity of the university as it relates to our mission and our vision, and we take very seriously the fact that we are a community of faith and discovery committed to excellence in thought, beauty and expression, generosity and service, and faith in God. So consistent with that mission, the Blake Center aims to fulfill every part of the university's mission in doing its work. So it's an important part of our university here.
Yes. So right now our attention, as we look at the news and even here in our own community, our attention is on the Black Lives Matter movement. Can you talk with us a bit more about that movement?
Sure. The Black Lives Matter movement is an international human rights organization that really began, in some ways, began as a hashtag in the wake of the shooting death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri about 6 years ago. And seeing the proliferation of violence, the ongoing violence from police in Black and brown communities, I think the organizers of Black Lives Matter decided that it was time to have a grassroots movement emphasizing the importance of local police reforms and their interactions with people in Black communities. And of course, the nation is still reeling from the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and we could mention so many other names as we go down the list of people, of unarmed Black people who in the past 4 to 5 years or so have been killed by police doing the most ordinary of tasks. Botham Jean was at home eating a bowl of ice cream when a police officer came into his apartment and killed him. Tatiana Jefferson was up at 1 o'clock in the morning playing video games with her nephew, and a police officer in Dallas, Texas shot and killed her. Breonna Taylor, of course, was at home asleep at 1 a.m. And as these things continue to happen, it has a real impact in Black communities because there's a growing, well, I shouldn't say growing, there is an abiding sense in which in Black communities throughout the United States, there's very little confidence in the criminal justice system. And so it's important to underscore that Black Lives Matter isn't just concerned about police killings, but the subsequent lack of accountability for police killings of unarmed Black citizens. That's what creates the problem. A lot of people will object and say, well, there's a lot of so-called Black on Black crime. That phraseology has its own problems, but beyond that, there's no need to protest that because Black people who kill other Black people get prosecuted and get held accountable and go to prison. But police officers who kill unarmed Black people typically get no consequences whatsoever. And this is the real problem. So that's the chief concern of the Black Lives Matter movement, and what it's trying to do now throughout the country is to raise awareness about the importance of rethinking how we do policing. So there's a lot of things that are going on along those lines throughout the country now.
Could you say more to us about that, how we might understand some of the things that we're hearing in the news about defunding police forces, dismantling them?
Sure. Well, I think, so these terms, defund and dismantle, immediately bring to mind abolition, but they don't necessarily mean that. If you follow politics, the people who are on the far right of the ideological spectrum are sort of judging the discourse of the Black Lives Matter movement by their own standard. So, for example, when they speak of defunding Planned Parenthood, they are, people on the right that is, they are essentially talking about abolition. But that's not the case for folks who come from the ideological left, who may be talking about defunding or dismantling. Instead of abolition, what they mean is that police departments have generally demonstrated themselves to be overfunded and over-militarized and underserving communities that they're duty-bound to serve. And so when we speak of defunding, or when Black Lives Matter speaks of defunding, what they are really speaking to is a reallocation of resources in such a way as to alleviate the burdens from police officers who are now expected to do mental health interventions, social work type of interventions. And these are things that police should not have the burden to bear. Police should be in the business of dealing with crime, right? And the problem now is that when people hear defund or dismantle, they start to think that they won't be able to call 911 if a crime is being committed. That's not the case. What it means instead is, if someone's having a mental health crisis, or if there's some sort of dispute that doesn't involve criminal activity, instead of bringing an armed police officer to a conflict who's not trained to resolve it, what would happen if communities redirected money to have trained professionals do interventions, in the same way that when you call 911, if there's a fire, the police don't come, right? But the fire department comes. Mm-hmm. And so this is what we mean this is what is meant when you hear the phrase when you hear the term defund. When you hear the term dismantle, I think that refers to a shift from a military model of policing to a community-based oriented policing, right? So rather than have police sort of occupy neighborhoods and surveil them and just sort of wait for people to break the law, instead of that kind of oversight, police would assume a more supportive role in communities, introducing themselves to the neighbors, letting them know that they're here to help them, being part of that community instead of being outsiders who come in to enforce law in all sorts of ways that have proven to be deeply problematic. So those are what those terms really mean, I think. It's
really talking about a paradigm shift.
Yes.
In how we would look
exactly.
at law enforcement.
Yes.
So what would you say, and this is probably way too big a subject for the few minutes we have, but what would be some of the most pressing race issues that you see that we're facing, maybe beyond the police?
So beyond policing, I would say two things. One related to criminal justice reform broadly, which is that the relationship between it isn't just policing that needs reform. There has to be prosecutorial reform as well. The relationships that district attorneys' offices have with police departments needs to be re-examined. For example, in many cases, what ends up happening, if you go back 6 years ago to Michael Brown's case, for example, in Ferguson, Missouri, there's a very cozy relationship between the district attorney and law enforcement and the police. And what ends up happening is, instead of having witnesses come forward at a probable cause hearing or at a preliminary hearing and openly testify about what happened and letting a judge decide if there's sufficient evidence to send the case to a trial, what typically happens now is that there's a grand jury investigation. And the problem with grand jury investigations is that they tend to be highly secretive, And because they're so secretive, they have a way of undermining public confidence in the system. And so I think that has to change from a standpoint of looking at the police as part of an overall system. So looking at prosecutors too. Another problem that's really pressing is the reality of understanding that legal reform, law and legal systems, particularly in America, systems that are structured upon rights and reciprocity and so forth, from a moral standpoint or a spiritual standpoint, are profoundly limited in what they can accomplish. The real work, the real hard work, is work on hearts and minds.
Yes.
If people are determined to do the right thing internally, you don't need laws.
Isn't that true?
Externally. Laws become superfluous expressions of a political will, which is fine. There's a need to have them. But when a person is determined to follow the golden rule,
yes,
which is, in a sense, what black people are asking whites to do, treat me as you would want to be treated. There's a famous race educator who asked a room full of people, would any of you want to be black? And no one raises their hand, right?
Yes.
And the reason why no one raises their hand is because no one wants to be treated the way a black person is treated. But if we follow the teachings of the Savior, when he says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, then laws, again, while important, right, they become almost unnecessary, because people are determined to live, as I said, internally by their own internal spiritual and moral motivation. Now, the difficult question is, how do we get there, right? Well, I guess if I knew the answer to that question, we'd be able to solve all the problems of the world.
And it is individual, and then all of us collectively as
individuals. It is,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the things, last week I was blessed to address the university in assembly. And one of the things that I tried to impress upon my colleagues, my faculty and staff colleagues and administrative colleagues here at the university is how important it is for whites to undergo the biblical notion of kenosis, or an emptying of oneself. When a lot of whites see the George Floyd videotape, they immediately move to obfuscation. Well, what did he do? Or I didn't see the whole thing. And there's a profound sense of privilege that builds up in a lot of whites. And when I say privilege, I don't mean that white people don't have trials or tribulations or suffer or struggle, because they most certainly do. We all do. That's the human condition. But what I do mean by white privilege is that if I get pulled over by the police, I have a set of concerns that most white people never have to worry about. And that's the real issue. And that level of privilege has accumulated so much throughout the history of Western civilization that a lot of whites would rather indulge that privilege and avoid responsibility. And we do it by hiding behind law and legal systems. We do it by hiding behind theology. And we say, oh, racism is just all about sin. And you know, that's a way of avoiding responsibility, right? But if we could find a way to empty ourselves, Philippians 2:7-8 says that Jesus made himself of nothing, right? He emptied himself in order to save us. And the Greek word there is kenosis. If whites could find a way to empty themselves of privilege and influence long enough to just listen to what black people are saying, if we could achieve that level of listening, then I think we can begin to make some real progress.
We have very short time left, but I would be happy for you to touch on what's happening here locally in Walla Walla.
Yes, well, in here locally, as you may know, this past Sunday, some of our own students organized a protest march in town, and it was very well attended. It was very peaceful. It was very orderly. And we're very excited about, very proud of our students here at Walla Walla University. And we're hopeful that we can make this university a place where students can come and really undergo a spiritual transformation in the age in which we live, where students can come from all walks of life to our wonderful institution and leave prepared to serve a world that is waiting to meet someone who is excellent in their thinking, right?
Yes.
Who is generous with their service, who has faith in God, who fulfills the mission of our university, and that's very, very important. So we're proud of our students and the protests that they organized this past Sunday.
Thank you. I appreciate you being my guest so much, Dr. Golden. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a blessing to be here.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It is time now for Station News. The first thing I want to tell you about is that stuff is happening at the new facility with the tower. Forms for the tower base have been put in place this week, and we will be done with the rebar on this base soon and ready to have it inspected. And so just wanted to let you know things are moving forward with that. Also, we wanted you to know that we will not be carrying the Walla Walla University graduation on Blue Mountain Television this year because of the COVID-19 situation. That graduation is going to be simply an online thing, and it will already be available as a live stream through the university for those who want to watch it. But we hope that we'll be back with our live graduation program next year. Also, we wanted to let you know that we're getting a great reception to Secret Life of the Forest, which began airing on a sister station, Better Life TV, in Southern Oregon back in March. And they're getting good responses from their viewers about the program, so we're just really happy that we got to share that with them. And we are continuing production on Secret Life of the Desert. In fact, Daniel and Mike are headed to the San Juan Islands, where, believe it or not, there is a desert, in June, later on this month, where they are going to be filming a very rare butterfly. So keep listening for more information about Secret Life of the Desert as we get that program prepared for you. And again, mark your calendars for June 29 and 30 for our summer fundraiser. And we can let you know now who our special guests for this program are going to be. On the first night of our fundraiser, it will be Janelle and Rolando Fulgencio, and they're going to be here to talk with us about keeping ourselves healthy, especially in the situation where we've got a lot of viral disease going on around us. And then on the second night, you're going to be hearing from Mike Denny, who will be here to share about the natural world. And both of those evenings, we're going to be looking for your calls and your questions. So it's going to be very interactive. We want to be hearing from you. These people want to address your questions and answer them for you while we're live on the air. So mark that again, June 29 and 30. And then we would like to encourage you to be supportive of Blue Mountain Television, certainly through your prayers, but also you know that this ministry is funded by those of you who watch and are interested in what we're doing and how we're reaching out to our community. It's viewer supported and viewer funded, so we would love to hear from you. These have been very challenging and trying times the last few months as we've been at our stay-at-home orders and where a lot of people have been facing various financial challenges. But we would ask that maybe you stretch a bit. Give an extra gift. Maybe God's done something great in your life that you'd like to thank Him for, and you might want to send a gift the direction of Blue Mountain Television. We would invite you to do that, encourage you to do it, and of course welcome. And you can do that online or by calling in or by sending something in. So there are a number of ways that you can contribute to this ministry. I hope you'll start telling your friends about the This Week from Blue Mountain Broadcasting program as well. You can watch it on the broadcast, you can watch it on the live stream, you can watch it on demand at our website, and we're hoping that we'll continue to gather more viewers who are interested in some of the things that are going on in our community and what is going on with our ministry here at Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association. It's great to have been with you today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me.